So, oh, and there's Bob. Hi, Bob.
Thanks, Frederick.
So I'm going to go ahead and put all of you folks on mute, and just for the time being, and then go ahead and walk through the material that I wanted to share with you today, and then take you off mute at different points, and we can hopefully have a little discussion here. So, well, I think, let me just double check here by looking around the room, but I think everybody here already knows me and my work. So I can dispense with some of the formalities. Although, I don't know, Ed and Jack, have you seen or my 3-minute Warrior Films introductory trailer? If so, just give me thumbs up. If not, okay, no. Oh, okay, you've seen it, Jack, but not you, Ed? Okay. Well, yeah, I like to show it to people that are new to my work. So if I'll beg the forbearance of all of the rest of you and go ahead and play it now, and Ed can see it and you can get a quick refresher. Fortunately, it's only 3 minutes. So let's see here. Okay. And bear with me just a moment. Can't seem to find it. Hang on. Well, I'm going to have to close some other windows in order for it to appear, it looks like. All the windows that I had scrupulously already opened in order to be absolutely prepared. I'm now closing. All right, let's see what happens here.
Frederick, I'm familiar with your work. I may not have seen that particular 3-minute one, so I'm not sure it's crucial for me to see that tonight.
Well, it's kind of you to say, Ed, but I'm going to go ahead and show it because now I have it.
This world that we all share is an extraordinary place. And if every one of the 7 billion people on our planet had the same opportunity to express their talents, well, we believe this world would be even more wonderful for everyone in it. And that's why we're here. We are Warrior Films. peaceful warriors intent on protecting and serving communities around the world by telling stories of people who may be underrepresented, overlooked, or just plain ignored.
All right. Well, I think that that was not a fruitless exercise because a lot of the films clips that I want to share with you today actually circle back to some of those same films that you just saw very briefly in that quick company overview. So the roadmap for today for us, I actually had hoped that we might have some special guests, some of the women who actually starred in some of the film clips that you're going to see today. That didn't work out, although it was nice just to see William again. We had William with us just 3-4 weeks ago in salute of Black History Month. We showed some different clips from Hoop Dreams than what I'll show today. So my thought today was to just show you 2 clips from one film, and then we'll pause and take your questions and comments, and then we'll go back to 2 other different films and also look at 2 clips from each of those. I expect we'll go about 90 minutes total, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And then at the very end, I think I'll share with you an excerpt from my new book. But before we go to any of that, I just want to give you kind of a little bit of background on me and my work and sort of how I came in a kind of a general way to some of these subjects. In 2002, I screened my Boys to Men series at the Newark Museum in Newark, New Jersey. And after the screening, a young girl came up to me and she asked me, kind of a heartbreaking question. She said, "Don't you like girls?" And I took it as a kind of a measure of the zero-sum equation environment that we live in today, that, you know, whatever is good for boys must be bad for girls. And I told her, you know, I guess I felt a bit defensive. It's like, no, I love girls, but I'm just focused on boys in my work. And I get it. I get the source of that question. You know, it comes from a place of fear due to the huge historical inequalities, obviously, between men and women, between boys and girls. But today, I think it's a much more complex equation than it's ever been. And I feel very strongly that helping boys and men to step into the mature masculine will only help girls and women. And in fact, I've written a number of blogs on the subject. One of them is called Women Supporting Men Supporting Men. And in that one, I talk about how it always frustrates me how so many wonderful women do not support their men, whether husbands, brothers, fathers, sons, in going off to do what we tend to call men's work, so that they can become better men. And I get, again, the source, you know, in the past, historically, you know, many times when men would go off together, it would mean, you know, drinking, drugging, whoring, violence, right? And so that's some of the source, I think, of that resistance on the part of women to support men and going off to do the work they need to do to become the mature men that they may seek to become. So, and there was another blog I wrote too, Feminism versus Men is not a zero-sum game. So chunks of these blogs are actually folded into my new book, which, as I told you, I'll read an excerpt from later on. But that issue aside, you know, it is true that I have largely been focused on boys and men in my storytelling over the course of my 45-year career, because I think boys and men need a lot of help, maybe the most help. And they deserve special attention from my perspective to get to where they need to be or want to be. And, you know, at one level, you could say, well, men have to be meaningfully folded into the battle against patriarchy, which is something that I think most of us recognize is not serving the wholeness and wellness of all people on the planet. So that's one point. And then, you know, a lot of my emphasis too on boys and men is born out of my own experience in life. Having my dad die when I was 9 years old and not having any men show up to mentor me or initiate me to basically teach me how to become that man that I wanted to be. So I just wanted to say those few contextualizing comments so that you'd have a kind of a larger framework to look at some of these clips. Now, having said that, you know, the clips that I've picked that I want to share with you today, I think highlight wonderful women and in wonderful ways. So I want to start with my film Journey from Zanskar, which was released now, I guess, 11 years ago in 2010. And this is a film that we shot in Northwest India. Zanskar historically was a part of Tibet. And the story itself is about how two monks promised the Dalai Lama they're going to do what they can to save the dying Tibetan culture of their region of Zanskar, because they don't get much educational or cultural support from either the federal government of India or the state government of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So in this particular sequence, what we see is the monks gathering children. They ended up taking 12 children from Zanskar, they gathered in the capital of Zanskar, Padum, and left from there and actually tried to walk over a 17,000-foot pass to get into lower India, where the kids were then, it was planned that they would be distributed to schools and monasteries there. So this is a sequence that takes place about 10 minutes into the film. Let me just cue it up here now for you. Okay. Here we go. I seem to have lost access to my own share screen window. There we go. And here we go.
Okay. The monks collect the children from each home. It's a half-day's journey just to get to Ruru, where everyone is gathering. As they're leaving, Diki's mom asks Damchu if she can come along. He says, no problem. She and her husband will have their eldest daughter look after the younger children.
بتصور شو من عم تتصل ما تعمل ما درش لا ما كان نقول شو مشكلة
Okay. That I forgot to mention an important fact. When the children leave home, they leave possibly forever. Zanskar is so remote. It's 12,000 feet elevation. The valley floor is 12,000 feet, and it's cut off from the outside world for about 7 months out of the year. It's ringed by very high Himalayan mountains. So the likelihood that these children, once having left home, will have both the money and the opportunity to return home is pretty small. It's a very, very undeveloped region historically. And now, after, I guess, it's been about 15 years that the Indian government has been working on a road to connect Zanskar with the rest of Lower India, and it's still a few years away. It's just the mountains are extremely difficult. So that's obviously raises the stakes enormously. And these children who are all going off to get educated in these other schools and monasteries have to pay the price of leaving their family of origin, and some basically for the bulk of the remainder of their childhood. So that was one scene. The bulk of the film itself is about their journey and about how it is that they fare walking over these high mountains and the challenges that they run into, which are numerous. But I'm going to go ahead now and share with you another clip, which actually happens quite near the end of the film. They do end up making it eventually. And Dickie, who you just saw, her mother, who asked at the last minute to join, because she said she'd never been on pilgrimage before, she'd never had the opportunity to go to Dharamsala and to possibly see and meet the Dalai Lama and receive teachings from him, came. And so both Dickie's mother and father were able to accompany her to the nunnery where she was delivered by the monks. Again, this scene takes place near the end of the film.
야, 너 요지 않아야 돼. 뒤에 서서 이서만 자샤. 너무 돼. 야, 여기서 간다 돼. 그거 되잖아. 안 되면 지 주모지 지 나와줘.
더도 그러니까 사는 왜냐면 리가 전에 리용은 보면 용단 용은 보면 자마면 상 아니 살살면 가지고 달자랑 이시당 나도 볼수 없는 너 하네.
신당 먹어.
싱하니까 싱합니다.
Though Diki won't be admitted to school until April, she takes her nun's vows now.
리고는더 지금 말포지 뭐나부터 더 많지 건데. 야, 다들 주신 누가 나한테서만 캐래 맞아. 문화도 먼저.
아니 주님 돌아가는 대사했더니 양 안에서니 기범이도 이 안에서 걔는 지수나 생기도 지금 건조를 놓죠 야고때 이때 양 된다 마시는 건조를 놓죠
드럼즈나 그냥 돌라즈리 지절로
돌라
돌라즈나 나 주무지 태보여서 왜 드럼
돌라 지야 구실 때양 에밀라 스네 마주밀라 두고 마당나 대안이 주바 디양 시바 양 에밀리 토치다
Geshe arranges for Diki to live with a housekeeper until school starts. For each month Diki's there, Geshe gives her about $40.
랍다리케는 다 지사만 자할래 용난 다 지는 그 zaman 일단 지사만 딘줄래 지사만 열시키나 지는 참만이 그 zaman 랍다리케는 참만은 아니 랍다 용은 자지만 양현은 두라니 참을어디 그 두신거고 예 마체다 같이 거 있네 그래서 두면이랑 리파즈 필드 제가 제가 살았었어요. 만체 두르듯이 두신거
Her father gives her most of the rupees he has left.
So more background material that I left out. You hear Richard Gere's voice narrating the film. What was the other piece I wanted to say? Well, yeah, we can talk about it. I'm happy to actually open the floor now to your questions. I have my own interpretations of some of what I just shared with you, but I'm happy to take your questions and comments now. You know, it's one of the hallmarks, I think, of my work is that I like to tell stories about people in a sense, you could say, who are in impossible positions. If you think of Hoop Dreams, for example, you know, the parents of Arthur and William, in one way, you know, certainly didn't like the idea of sending their kids from far from home to a school way out in the suburbs. And yet they also recognized that the school represented tremendous opportunities for them that they couldn't otherwise get from local schools. So there was a real price to be paid. And it's interesting how this same theme played itself out in this film Journey from Zanskar. These parents made the impossible choice of sending their children away, again, some as young as 4 years old. And again, many of whom they may not see for many years, in order to give them the possibility of an education that would be far better than what they would receive in Zanskar. And not only would it be better, but it would also educate them in Tibetan culture, language, and history, which is fundamental to their sense of identity, of who they are as a people. So I had many mothers view this film in the United States when we first released it, who would say to me afterwards, "Oh, I could never do that. I would never let my son go. I would never let my daughter go." Well, I understand that. I appreciate that. But fortunately for them, they're not in this impossible position where they're living in a place of relative deprivation and extreme hardship and frankly, poverty. And the opportunity for one of the kids to go abroad. It's funny because in Zanskar, they actually say going to India is like going abroad, even though they're part of the same country. That's how remote it is and has been historically. So for them to go to lower India and to go to these schools is yes, a long way away, but it's worth the price for the child and hopefully for the family eventually when the kid comes back educated, and then hopefully also for the culture and the community as a whole. And now they're actually coming of age. So we filmed the story in 2004. So, you know, those 4-year-old kids in 2004 are now 21, 22. So they're finishing their BAs. Most of them went right from high school into college. And the hope is that they will continue on with their education and then come back. Hopefully some of them will return to Zanskar. At the very least, they'll be sending money, I'm sure, to support their families. But the hope is many will come back as doctors, teachers, engineers, you know, to help the entire Zanskari community. So I'll pause again and just ask if you have any questions or comments. It's fine to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Frederick, there's a question on the chat from Gail. You want to go ahead and read that?
Oh, oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, hi, Gail, and thanks for joining us. You know, the monks, I don't know if you all read the question in the chat window that Gail asked, but, you know, why didn't the monks open up a small school in their local area? Well, the fact is they did. And we actually explain this. Well, actually, do we? Now I can't remember. I remember editing that explanation into the film, but I might have actually ended up putting it on the cutting room floor near the final stages of editing. But they built a school in their monastery, Stongdae Monastery, and the intention was and is to have local children just stay in the area and attend school there. And the big problem, though, that they have is they want to offer the best of both Tibetan education, but also Western education. And they've had terrible problems getting Western teachers to come there and stay there, because this is an extreme environment. Again, it's not only 12,000 feet high, it's a high desert. So it's extremely dry. You see Damchu, one of the monks, making a joke to Dikit's father when Dikit's father says, for them, you got to understand, it's like landing in Oz. I mean, they've never seen such greenery. They've never seen rain, most of them. So it's a veritable paradise to be in Lower India. And Damchu teases Dikit's father and says, oh yeah, we have forests in Zanskar. There are no forests. There are no trees. So in fact, the only water that nourishes the region and allows for life to occur is the runoff, the glacial runoff from the surrounding glaciers. So they irrigate the land by directing that glacial runoff. And now, of course, with climate change, that's causing all sorts of new problems for them, but they cannot rely on rainfall. So anyway, the monks have yet to really succeed in getting Western teachers to last beyond a full year because the winters are brutal there. You know, it's snow, and I think the average temperature is probably about 10 to 15 degrees below Fahrenheit, but below 0 Fahrenheit. So it's extreme. So anyway, let me see what else you asked here, Gail. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, the monks absolutely understood this. And so that was their intention. In fact, we filmed them building the school. And early on in the edit of the film, we had a 15-minute sequence, which surveyed the entire educational landscape of Zanskar, pointing to all of the complexities about why some children could get a Tibetan education if they went to private school, but most children could not because they couldn't afford it. Their families couldn't afford it. So, and all kinds of other complexities, including the government schools, they teach Urdu and Hindi. So historically, the Muslim language and the Hindu language, not Zanskari, not Tibetan. So they're not even, so in a sense, the situation in the public schools is a bit akin to what we experience here in North America with Native American children being kidnapped and taken away from their families. You know, this continued up and through the 50s, I believe, maybe 60s and beyond, and put in American public schools where they also were not taught anything about their own history, their own language, and their own culture. So the irony of our story is that they have to leave in order to get it. Thank you for that, Gail. I appreciate it. Any other comments or questions? All right, well, let's go ahead, and I have a couple scenes queued up from Hoop Dreams that I wanted to share with you. This first scene is a wonderful scene between William and Catherine, who was then his girlfriend, later became his wife, and the mother of his 5 children. Anyway, so this is them at about age 16, 17, having a brief argument in the kitchen. So it's only a minute long, but I like it so much, I wanted to share it with you.
This coach is stingy and selfish. She just want William to run out there and play. Yes, the day she was gonna, be born, I told him he had to be there. I don't care what his coach said. I know the game was important, but this was more important. And his coach doesn't say it like that.
I just can't miss the game just because, an incident occurred. Unless it was like a death or something like that.
Oh, this is one something like that thing. Like the girl was born every day. That's not funny.
Around that time of the year too, state tournament, that was simply out of question.
He tells me, well, it'll benefit us in the future. I'm like, but what about now? He keeps saying in the future.
Basketball was my ticket out of the ghetto. If I would have been playing ball, I would not even be going to college.
I'm going to school, I'm going to college, and I have a daughter. So what's my excuse?
Situations are much different.
No, it's not.
Okay. I love that line. I'm going to school, I'm going to college, and I have a daughter. So what's my excuse? All right, well, here's another long sequence. This is about 5 minutes from about the middle of Hoop Dreams. And it shows Arthur Agee's mother, Sheila. And it starts with her reviewing some of Arthur's work at Marshall High School, where he was a student, and then goes into a scene where she receives a nursing assistant's diploma. And I'll explain a little bit more about our thinking around these issues after you see the scene here.
Move out the way, move out the way.
Its botanical name is Cannabis sativa. Millions of Americans break the law and use it.
Arthur's latest report card shows he's failing both Spanish and science.
He rushed through his work. As you see, he's turning in. He just missed one assignment. Okay, his test scores are pretty low. 10 on one test.
Will you do me a favor? When you see things that's slipping like this, could you give me a call and let me know?
Let me make sure I have the right phone number.
So I have to stay up on top of this board because he tells you one thing. I said, where your book? Oh, we didn't have to work on the book. It's in my lock. So you're gonna have to start showing me something better.
He probably on the borderline and all that clowning, and people just get mad. That's what I would do too.
Get mad, but I'm gonna step on it behind this time around. I told him I ain't finna sit up here. We paying $181 after the St. Joe.
Right.
For his transcript. And he got the transcript and he ain't doing that. It ain't gonna happen like that. Man, you remember I told you whatever I start, I finish. I'm not like some people I know. I don't need nobody to push me. All I gotta do is have the goal and the motivation, and I'm ready.
It's Sheila's graduation day from a nurse's assistance class at a local community center. A high grade will assure her certification.
I wanted to be an RN nurse. I've always had that dream. This age.
Sheila, you scored 89 exam, and you're gonna get the highest grade point average for the class.
Really? No. Oh, I love you. Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, thank you, Miss Mark. Oh,
you did it yourself.
Oh, thank you. Oh, you're so good. I think I could do it.
I think you could do it.
Yeah, you did. I didn't have to leave for myself. You really inspired me to go on. Not just stop right here, but go far. And people told me I wasn't gonna be anything. Should the shadows fall, I sing because I'm happy, and I sing because I'm free.
Well, I don't know about you, but that scene breaks my heart. You know, it's interesting because Steve and I, Steve James, my principal fellow filmmaker on this film, you know, we discussed a lot whether we should include this sequence in the final film or not. And, you know, we were very much aware the running time of the film was 3 hours, and PBS wasn't happy with us. It was too long. And, you know, and we knew that, you know, in an ideal world, we would make serious cuts. And we did make some to bring down the overall length of the film. And arguably, this whole sequence is not about Arthur himself and whether, you know, he makes it either as a basketball player or as a successful student. I mean, you know, it's his mom. But then, you know, we sort of, at the end of the day, we looked at each other and we said, you know, if we can't include a sequence like this, which is so moving and inspiring, and in a sense goes so much to the heart of the story, which is about self-improvement, about African-American inner city families improving their lives and moving on and against all odds, then what are we making this for? What is the point? So we did include it, and I'm really glad that we did. And it's devastating, frankly, to see this scene. You see this giant room where there's like 10, 12 people attending, to see these 8 Black women graduate from this program and get these nursing assistant diplomas. And nobody else is there. And then in the very next scene, which I didn't show you, but we cut to the Marshall High School gymnasium where Arthur and his team are playing basketball, and it's jam-packed. There are hundreds of people there to see the game. So for me, it underscores this disparity of what society values. You know, we value sports, we value entertainment, but we don't particularly value the education and self-improvement, particularly of Black women. So let me pause there and open the floor again to your questions or comments about these Hoop Dream scenes. I didn't mention it up front, but right after you see Sheila meeting with Arthur's science teacher, Clarence Webb, Coach Luther Bedford, who's Arthur's basketball coach, he happened into the principal's office there, and they had that little brief conversation. And in that conversation, they're referencing the fact that Sheila and her husband are paying St. Joseph's a significant amount of money for them in order to get St. Joseph's, the private Catholic school where Arthur went for a year and a half, to release his transcripts so that he can get the credits that he needs in order to graduate from Marshall High School. And in a sense, they're sort of holding those credits hostage for the family to pay back tuition fees. And so they're doing that, Sheila and her husband. And so she was complaining to the coach that here he is, now he's flunking some courses at Marshall, and the family is bent over backwards to get his transcripts over to Marshall so he can graduate high school. So to put it mildly, she wasn't happy with him. All right, well, if nobody has any questions or comments, I'll go ahead and share with you now some scenes.
Sorry, Frederick.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Karina.
Yeah, no, just a quick note. I think it's awesome that you decided, at that time to keep both of the films, both of those scenes kind of juxtaposing or, parallel to one another. And I think it's so timely today too. I think that it just kind of outlasts the time. So thought that was great. And Gail has a comment as well. So wanted you to make sure you saw that.
Yes, oh yeah, thank you, yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great question. Where was their Black community or fellow church members? This scene took place not in a church. It was at a community center, an employment center. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The poignant shot of the largely empty room at the end of the scene, again, is we immediately edit it with the next scene, and you see this jam-packed room with everybody there to root on the Marshall Commandos basketball team. Yeah, no, that's a fair question. Where's the community? There's a lot of folks probably at work. This did take place during the day, during a work day. So I'm sure that accounted for a number of them, but yeah, I don't know why I'm trying to answer. I think your question is rhetorical, Gail. That's fair enough. Where is the community?
Frederick, I don't know if you can.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I didn't really mean it to be rhetorical. Here, I'll put myself on the video while I'm talking. Hi.
Hi.
I didn't really mean it to be rhetorical. It's just when you said it was heartbreaking and that it was like, society that doesn't respond to these Black women and their accomplishments. I felt like, I don't know, it was heartbreaking, and for me in a bigger way, because for me, society in general is racist and cruel to the Black community. But usually the Black community is there for each other from what I've been able to see in my limited experience. But still, it feels like there's a strength within the Black community that has sustained people to be able to thrive to some extent, despite, white America. So I felt like it was really heartbreaking to me that I didn't see the Black community there to support them, because I thought that could be like the woman that sang at the very beginning of that clip. She had a church kind of voice, she had that big, lovely voice. And I thought, oh, yes, we're going to lift these women up to heaven kind of thing. And then it was like, oh no, it was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. So, yeah.
I agree with you. It is heartbreaking.
So I had that comment because that's how it hit me. And it's complicated. It's not just that, society does its thing, but then there's like, well, wait a minute, there's ways that women are disregarded by all communities, or, like a lot of different aspects. So I just felt like I wanted to add to the conversation by saying the suffering that I was feeling, seeing that clip.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it very much. And you're right, it is complicated. And, certainly, racism and sexism and classism, all of these isms are real. And we still have individual volition, we still have opportunities, that make us each responsible in ways for each other nonetheless. So I think that's both are true.
I'll tell you, I'm just thinking a lot about community more this year than ever because of COVID and because I live alone and the isolation has been kind of killing. And so I'm looking at groups and people who have community that I didn't realize was, I've always liked the idea of community, and what I did in Sangha was about that. But, the Sangha that you and I were both in is no longer really, it's there, but it's not. And And I mean, so this, what's coming up in both films really is about community and kind of how the community holds or doesn't hold, and what's the strengths and what are the weaknesses. So it's striking me because I'm thinking a lot about how people are embedded or are not embedded in a community that supports and holds them through this journey of life.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And you're right, arguably more so now than ever, you know, because not only due to COVID, but our communities are all so fragmented in so many ways.
Right, right.
You know, and now I'm I'm asking myself, gosh, I wonder if I could read you a different segment of my book in a few minutes, because I have a whole chapter called Community. And it's about how we can, in effect, heal broken communities. But arguably, that would get us off the subject of women. So maybe I won't, but maybe I'll think about it for next month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. Yeah. Any other questions or comments before we move on? Yeah, go ahead, Bob. I think you can unmute yourself, but because you're muted. There you go.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I was just really touched by what, I don't know if she said, if I heard it exactly right, but she seemed to be saying that people told her that she wasn't going to succeed.
Yes, you heard that right. And, and you know, being filmmakers, of course, we have the privilege of seeing lines like that over and over and over again and analyzing them. And for us, what that meant was really her husband. Her husband was unsupportive, I'll put it as generously as I can, was unsupportive of her own self-empowerment and self-improvement efforts. And so when she says, people told me I wasn't going to be anything, that's what it meant to Steve and I.
So was her husband wasn't succeed? Was it he didn't want to see his wife perform better, succeed more than he would?
Well, yeah, I just think that it's a reflection of sexism, you know, of some degree of like, yeah, not wanting to see her succeed in ways that he had failed.
Yeah.
And if you remember the story, earlier in the story, he actually leaves the family, partly because of unemployment. He cannot find a job, and then it feeds into drug addiction. And for a period of time, he leaves the family and ends up living on the streets. So yeah, so that was, I think, some of the background in a sense to that statement. And I think you're very right to call it out because it's memorable. You know, people told me I wasn't going to be. How many women hear that, right?
And it also shows how you show both men and women. Earlier you talked about men and women, so here you did very touchingly to both the men and the woman in that little piece. Yeah. Anyways, very moving, very moving.
Well, let me share with you now the trailer for a film which is not yet released. In fact, it's not finished, but it will be finished within 2 months. It's one of the 5 films that will be in our Veterans Journey Home series. And this one is called On Black Mountain. And it's so named because there's a retreat that 22 women veterans participate in together. It's basically a mindfulness meditation-based retreat. And it takes place on Black Mountain, which is a mountain that is just north of the Russian River and just a few miles east of the Pacific Ocean. So it's in Sonoma County, north of San Francisco. And it's a Tibetan retreat center where it all takes place. So first I want to show you the trailer. It's just 2 minutes long. We'll give you kind of a quick overview of the whole film. And then I want to show you a particular 5-minute sequence. The sequence kicks off with a question from one of the facilitators saying, okay, now we're going to explore what was it like to be a woman in the military? And you'll see the reactions. They are painful ones.
I always wanted to be a soldier. When I left my family, I made the decision to leave my career and pursue another career because I've always been a soldier.
It was clear I was a woman and I was less. I wasn't allowed a seat at the table.
It happened to us and our brothers did it to us. We didn't have to go to war to fight an invisible war.
I was part of the problem. I was complicit in it.
I know who I was in the military, but who am I now?
The theme for this retreat is the courage to connect with each other. The courage to connect with our own life experiences.
I am super proud of being super gay.
If I would have known this was about self-compassion, I wouldn't have come. Where do you get blocked? Where do you get lost?
I don't know what the next step is. It's okay not to know.
Okay, and now to this sequence that I just spoke about.
What we're going to be exploring together this morning is, what did it mean to be a woman in the military for you? A lot of times we haven't ever had the chance to talk to other women veterans about our experience as women veterans in a supportive way.
Even the question of what does it mean to serve as a woman in the military, just the language around that even feels kind of loaded.
Yeah.
I served under Dundas Hotel for so many years. I was married to a woman and deploying, and people are having conversations about their families and who's at home, and I didn't feel like I could share those things. The way I kind of coped with that was, I'll make myself just a badass flight medic, and I don't have to be thought of as something else other than just a badass flight medic. And so that's who I was for a lot of years. But there's an absence of fullness in that person.
I can remember in Iraq, I
experiencing soldiers coming back bloody from their different missions where somebody may have gotten shot. You can't take people out of the war, so you can't say, oh, you saw too much, so you got to stay back this time. But you got to get them ready to go again the next day. You're the head mental health person, so you're not allowed to kind of fall apart.
I was a medic. I was there to treat the local women because the men couldn't. So my experience was probably, I looked at it more as a positive. Now, what does it mean to be a female in the military? I never noticed. I don't know. I mean, I never thought about it.
I cannot forget, I cannot erase things that I've seen and things that I've done and things that happened to me.
It was clear I was a woman and I was less. And not because of my merit, not because of my decision-making or anything. It just, I wasn't allowed a seat at the table.
My way away from my parents was going to the Naval Academy in the 90s. And it was a horribly abusive environment.
We're going to protect each other. We die for each other, right? That's what we do. Semper Fi, always faithful, never leave your brother behind. And that wasn't how it was for me.
I wrote stuff about people that wasn't true, that affected their career and their livelihood because I was ordered to.
They destroy people's careers. They destroy their life. And I was part of the problem. And I was complicit in it.
I don't trust women. They were my worst enemies because they would know what happened. They saw it. I had a woman walk in when I got attacked in the shower. A woman walked in and I didn't expect her to save me. I expected the support and it wasn't there.
Oh, they all turned on me too.
And I didn't say anything because I was afraid.
We see you, we hear you, we honor you. We got left out of the Me Too. You notice that the actresses and the stars, they got to spurt out everything that happened to them, but it happened to us and our brothers did it to us. We didn't have to go to war to fight an invisible war.
I fucked you over to save me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because I hurt you too. I had no choice. My ass was on the line.
Irene, I totally share the same feelings you have. Thank you for saying that. Thank you so much.
Irene, it doesn't matter because I did what you didn't do and it only ruined me. Because we can't win in this system. They don't believe us.
Well, I think in a way, Deanna's comment sort of sums it up. You know, we can't win in this system. Yeah. Does anybody have any comments or questions about this? Oh, that's the film again is called On Black Mountain. It's part of a 5-film series called Veterans Journey Home. So 3 of the films are already finished. In fact, 2 of them have been winning awards at festivals now for over a year. And the last 2 films will both be done in May. So we'll have all of them out and released to the world. There's something that I like about this particular film. It's only 50 minutes long, but it's kind of stripped down. I mean, basically all we see in the film are these women speaking to each other and doing small group processing, and also meeting with the facilitators one-on-one, and then meditating. You know, they're meditating in the big space where they all meet together, and they're meditating, doing walking meditation. And there's a lovely sequence where they all get in cars and go out to the ocean for a day, and go off and do some journaling by themselves, reflections of what their journey has been on the retreat. So the actual retreat was a 4-month period, and we filmed, I guess, let's see, let me see if I remember this. The first gathering was 5 days, and then they met a month later for 3 days, and then they met 3 months later for 3 more days. And so we filmed all of those days, but we just collapsed it all into one 50-minute story. So that's that film. Anybody have a comment or a question?
Quick question, Frederick. I'm curious now, as I know, the Veterans Journey Home series, you document, the psychological healing of veterans, both male and female. And I'm wondering what sort of healing processes or psychological talk you've seen in men vets versus women's vets. And if you have anything to share about that. I was just something that came across as I was watching these women express themselves. I was curious if you encountered some sort of difference between the two. And I think that, we're already so far behind in what we do for our veterans in general, right? But then add the fact that we're talking about women veterans, like, so how much more do we need to do to catch up to that, right? And I'm just wondering if you processed that at all throughout the filmmaking.
Yes, I did. And, from some very practical things, like trying to anticipate what my impact would be. I was the only man in the room. And I made a point of hiring a female camera person and a female sound recordist, because, it was important to me that there be other women in the room. But I tried to mitigate against my presence as much as possible, but it's impossible I'm a 6.5 foot male, so you can't exactly hide me behind a potted plant. So I underestimated the adverse impact that my presence would have. And I did everything in my power to mitigate against it, and it still didn't really work. So if I had to do it over, that's one thing I would probably do differently. I would probably actually hire a surrogate director, a woman, to be there in my place, and, to talk through the kinds of things that I was interested in beforehand, and maybe consult on the telephone at the end of every day, but let that woman, do her best to gather the best footage possible, and then, go from there, and, to in effect partner. So I didn't do that. And so, as I said, I made the best of what I could. So that was one issue. And to the point you're asking too about the difference between male vets and female, yes, I've observed that too. And I've been working with vets now 3-4 years. And I have to say, this is actually what I told the women at this retreat. I said, I've worked with probably 150 to 200 vets now, and I've known them pretty comprehensively and intimately. And I had to say that as difficult as it is for male vets to return to successful civilian life, I think it's far more difficult for women. And in fact, the suicide rate of women vets is well beyond that of male vets. It's bad enough for male vets, but it's far worse for women. And the kinds of stories that I witnessed these women sharing were a whole degree worse and more horrific than the things that I heard male vets share over the years. To just summarize it or generalize it, I'll say that male vets don't have to face a double enemy. Male vets, you know, yes, they might have problems with their superior officers, you know, and they'll face the enemy, quote unquote, in the field, yes. But women vets have to face a rear guard attack of their own fellow soldiers. And as Stephanie puts it in the clip that you just saw, this is the greatest betrayal of all, because they're supposed to be a team. They're supposed to have each other's backs. They're supposed to lay down their lives for one another if called to do so. And yet, almost to a woman, every woman in the room experienced rape, harassment, abuse, degradation of almost every conceivable kind from men who were their colleagues and their superior officers. And it's heartbreaking, but it's reality. So I don't know what else to say about it other than that it's the journey of healing for these women is longer and harder, I think, than it is for men. Yeah, no, you're right, Gail, too. I see your comment that, well, and they speak to that as well, right? That's the system does that, right? Conquer and divide. I mean, divide and conquer, right? So if you can turn, you know, these women on each other, then you will never bring to light all of the various crimes that are being committed against them, because they'll become complicit in the cover-ups, right? It's devastating.
Frederick?
Yes, Bob.
I'm kind of shocked that the women couldn't accept you there, knowing you as I do, that you're a fine, let's say, a fine human being, male or woman. But does it represent that they're so wounded by men, you know, by the treatment of men in the military, and so that it didn't matter who you were and how you were,
yes,
and you just could not be accepted, could not be. Another's very well. I think you understand what I'm getting at. The pain.
Yes, no, and the answer to your question is a simple yes. You know, just simply being a man in the room, it didn't matter. You know, these women were so wounded by men that, and I, you know, believe me, I talked through this issue too. I mean, with some detail with the facilitators, and I did not hit on the possibility of partnering with a woman director. So we did not discuss that, but we tried to do everything we possibly could to mitigate against, you know, the downside of my presence. And again, you know, we did not succeed really. And I get it. Now that I've experienced the whole thing, I get it.
Sad.
Yeah. Well, and it speaks to the depth of the wounding.
Yeah.
Right? It speaks to the depth. Yeah. 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 Well, let me shout out a welcome to Ben. Ben Singleton. I mentioned that we're in the process of finishing the last 2 veterans films, and one of them Ben is the star of. So Ben is a vet. Hey, there he is. Hi, Ben.
Hello, everyone.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Sorry, to tell you the truth, I was just scrolling through Facebook and saw this and just jumped on.
Okay. Well, hopefully you'll come back in a month or two, and we'll show a clip or 2 from your film.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, just so you know, I've been meaning to reach out to you, and we're coming very, very soon to the moment in time when you're going to be the first person outside of my editor and myself to look at your story. So
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. That's very intimidating, but exciting too. I'm excited.
Good. Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll have a lot to share with you to prep you before you look at it. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that is coming soon. So. All right. Well, it's any other last comments, questions, anything? Well, I'll just say, thank you again for joining us, all of you. And, we're doing these every month now. And now, partly thanks to Gail's question, I'm inclined to maybe make April Community Month. And maybe we'll share clips of films and excerpts from books, that have to do with community, the subject and theme of community.
Hey, Frederick?
Yeah.
Just one more question regarding the women vets. And I kind of written it, but I think it got lost, about possibly doing a follow-up to see, a few months later or a year later where these women have been able to get to. And then you have your opportunity to find a woman partner to direct, and you could go back in and see what happened, and, and hopefully good has happened, hopefully.
Yeah, well, yeah, what I've heard anecdotally has largely been pretty positive, because we filmed this from May through September of 2018. So we're coming up on 3 years now since it began. And anyway, so anecdotally, I hear that most of them are doing pretty well. But to the thrust of your question, I consider doing that, and certainly that's I don't know, standard documentary filmmaking practice, right? But I actually, maybe I'm just getting more radical in my old age or something, but I like this being a slice of life. And in fact, when you see the whole film, you'll see that we actually do little to nothing in the way of explaining of what is happening here and how did these women get here and all of the so-called backstory, much less the individual backstories of these individual women and how long they served and what initial, trials and traumas they had, etc. So yeah, we'll see, how the audience responds, but it's very much just this little slice of life.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, and I'm cool with that. I just thought it was really interesting. I had never heard of how much higher the suicide rate is amongst women soldiers. I know it was high among soldiers in general. So, and the fact that that these women are not supported by the men, we all know that, but that they're not supporting each other either because of the situation creates that. It's just like, I think that's a lot of new information for people that I would personally find fascinating to see what changes come about.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely a fair point. And frankly, my every expectation is most people are going to say the exact same thing that you're now saying. it's like, well, why couldn't you show us more and explain more and etc. But yeah, my only defense, and it's a weak one, is that you want to have the audience wanting to know more, because it's always better than having them know that's too much. I wish I had seen less, you know.
And maybe that's the job for a woman soldier who becomes a film director herself to make that.
Well, and frankly, if you all haven't seen it or heard of it, I really recommend the film Invisible War. It is a documentary about women suffering sexual abuse, violence, and discrimination in the military. It's a very powerful film. So that was also part of my thinking, is that, you know, I wanted to focus in a sense more on the healing aspect of it. You know, given the depth of these wounds that these women suffered, how can they get to a more equanimous place, a more peaceful place in their lives, a more self-accepting place? And that's somewhat of the journey that the story tells.
Yeah. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, Frederick, I wanted to mention that all the films you did today, I felt were very emotional and really touching. And given, since life has just been about COVID for the last year or whatever, it was just nice to deal with the in-depth and the emotional experiences people are going through and how they're growing and how they're improving. And so thank you for the films today.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. Yeah, it's always a treat to be able to share my work, you know, in real time with people. And then, you know, we can gather around the cyber fire and tease out the meaning of it all. So, you know, our hope is, frankly, to just keep building this community, to just have more and more people show up every month and join in the discussions. And I think I have a fair amount of thought-provoking stuff to present to people. So, you know, we'll see how it goes, but please keep coming back.
You know, I just want to say, you really do have a lot of thought-provoking stuff to share. That seems really important right now. I mean, with the concept of the rites of passage stuff, but also just where people are wounded in these various ways that life brings, that we really need these conversations right now, with the kind of films that you create and the questions that you raise, to be, because I mean, our whole society is so fractured, right? The whole society is fractured every which way, from up, you know, every direction. And so these kind of healing conversations are more important, it feels like to me.
Yeah, thank you. No, I couldn't agree more. And I'll say this, you know, as I mentioned early, I was going to share an excerpt from my book, but frankly, the more we discuss things together, the less relevant it seemed, the piece that I had chosen. So I made an on-the-spot decision to disinclude it. But I will say that I really recommend the book itself. It's called Rites to a Good Life, and it's RITES. It's now available in hard copy. We have it on Amazon, and also the ebook and the Kindle version is available. And the reason I mention it, Gail, is because in a sense, it's kind of the sum total of my thinking about societal solutions. I mean, they're really, I've tried to put every ounce of wisdom I've ever gleaned in my entire life into that book, in a way. So if nothing else, I think it's you know, I aim for it, I want it to be a little beacon of hope for these relatively dark times that we live in. Because, yeah, I think a lot of people need that nurturance, that sustenance. So definitely next month, I'll read a section or two maybe from the book, and whether it's about community or another chapter is called Making Every Moment Sacred, which is another very important subject to my heart. So anyway, check it out, and we'll hope to see you all next month. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Great to see you all. Have a peaceful and healthy month.
Thank you, you too.
I know.
Bye.
Bye, Ben.